I saw some movies this year, and some of them were actually alright. Despite 2023 being quite possibly the worst year I've ever had on this planet, there were a lot of good movies coming out to help raise my spirits, and even more of them were horrible. Last year I saw 16 movies in total, in theaters or otherwise, and I figured, like last year, I'd go ahead and rank them for you. Let's start with the honorable mentions, the 6 movies I saw that unfortunately will not be getting into the top 10, and thus are not worth more than 3 seconds of my time, because I am a very busy man with a very busy plan. The plan being sitting my ass in front of my computer and disassociating while thinking about my future like a champion. First, at the very, very, very rock bottom, was The Marvels. This movie is probably the least engaged I've ever been while watching a movie. It felt more like the series finale to a TV show than an actual movie. The only interesting thing there was about it was the 3 main characters swapping places whenever they used their powers. And then they removed that less than halfway through the movie. 3 characters who have similar powers fighting against a villain whose power is stealing the hero's power and using it as their own. I cannot understand how someone could write this film, realize the matchup of the same power 4 times in a row, and go, "Ah, yes, this is superb. We shall ship it out. It shall make billions." The plot was generic. One of the superheroes requires a Disney Plus subscription to understand. One of them is from a movie I never saw, and one of them was kind of cool, but I couldn't tell if they were pre-established or a debut character in this movie. If the best part about a Marvel film is its post-credits scene, that's when you know some changes need to be made. This shit gets like a 2. Next, we have The Blue Beetle. Never in a million, billion, trillion years did I think that the DC superhero movie of a year would beat out the Marvel movie of any given year. That being said, Blue Beetle was not much better. It certainly was a more competent film, and I was more entertained than when I was watching the Marvels, but I need to deliver a message to movie directors. Stop making the villains in these movies have these same powers as the protagonist, unless they are using them in some kind of unique way. This shit does not fly. I'm not saying it's a terrible idea, or whoever uses it in their movies is like a hack fraud or anything, but there is a good way to go about doing it, and most of the movies that do it don't do it. Like the original Iron Man, Obadiah had an Iron Man suit as well, but he put his own spin on it and made it absolutely massive. And also the fact that it was an outdated model of the same suit, which was used to defeat him. Another difference. That being said, I did enjoy the movie. Blue Beetle, I mean, not Iron Man. I mean, I did enjoy Iron Man, but I'm getting sidetracked. The funny George Lopez character said some funny lines, and it was funny. The movie also made me realize how few big-budget superhero films have a Mexican protagonist. I might just be uncultured or misinformed, but no one really comes to mind. That being said, Blue Beetle was very average. 5 out of 10. The Equalizer 3 is like John Wick, but a cool guy. I saw the other 2 Equalizers a long time ago, and I gotta say, this one felt a bit disappointing compared to those. This really does seem like a finale to Denzel Washington's character in The Equalizer, and the movie as a whole felt, I don't know, kinda weak. I did enjoy Robert's interactions with those Italian townsfolk, but I wish there was more of what Equalizer is known for. It ended up not leaving much of an impression on me, especially compared to the other 2. I'd give it like a 4 out of 10. I completely forgot I even saw Leo, so I'm gonna shoehorn it into this video right here, like 2 months after I wrote the original script. Cool? Cool. Leo was a pretty good little animated movie. Adam Sandler being an old person still doesn't really sit in my brain right, since I always think about younger Adam Sandler when I envision the dude. And that train of thought isn't really relevant to the movie, aside from Adam Sandler doing a really old-sounding voice, but it's a fun little musical movie with a good balance between sweet and satire. Between this and 8 Crazy Nights, I think he just likes making animated musicals. Also, the fact that Leo beat out Wish and Elemental last year in terms of reception is hilarious to me. Truly one of the worst years for Disney, and I am all for it. Although, Elemental kinda got shafted due to how poorly the movie was advertised. I'll give Leo like a 6. And speaking of Elemental is probably the safest Pixar movie since Finding Dory. Once again, Pixar thinks up an interesting concept for a world, and only ever scratches the surface of the world without ever delving into things that might be more interesting about it. I wish this movie was less about the romance between the 2 main characters, and more about the story of Ember's family immigrating to Element City, or whatever the hell it was called. That story was far more engaging to me, but instead I kept getting bombarded with this bargain bin, forbidden love story. Although they did say toot toot several times in the movie, so I'm going to have to give it a 5. And our last honorable mention is going to be Gran Turismo. I went into the theater for this movie expecting literally less than nothing. A movie based on a video game promotion they held one time? You gotta be shitting me. But what surprised me is that I actually didn't hate the movie. It had a fairly slow start, but once they actually get in the race cars, that's when I was hooked. I never heard of the story the movie is based on, but yeah, it was good. I'm not gonna marry it or anything, but I'll give it a 6. Okay, it's time for the big boys. Trolls Band Together. On the one hand, this movie was completely inoffensive and kind of embarrassing to watch as a grown-ass man. On the other hand, it was actually pretty funny. The Trolls movies have always been kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. Not that one, though. I like the first one, although I barely remember it, and the third one in the series is about the same level of good. The villains were pathetic lamos, and it fit very well into their whole shtick of being talentless hacks, similarly to Velvet's voice actor. But that's besides the point. Branch's brothers were kind of cool. They were so mean to John Dory. Save him, please. 6 out of 10. Five Nights at Freddy's. This was the spooky movie of the year. And the thing about this spooky movie is, it was not scary at all, even a little bit. This movie was probably the most exclusively for the fans film I've ever seen, which means it was a lot like the games. Mostly campy and goofy, with the little sprinkles of ambiguous horror. Honestly, I think if they went for a genuinely spooky approach, it wouldn't feel as true to the games. I'm glad they went down the path they did, because those animatronics the Jim Henson Company made are so accurate to the games, it's absurd. Also, why does a girl get bit in half in the middle of the movie and then it's never mentioned or anything like that happens ever again? 6 out of 10, anyways. The Super Mario Brothers movie. Without a doubt, the safest movie on this list. The Mario movie was definitely super exciting when I first saw it, and then I saw it again and I was like, oh yeah, this is only just good. Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with being just average. Definitely not with this movie, considering it made like $1 trillion bajillion at the box office. My one gripe about this movie was how fast it felt. 90 minutes was not enough to cram in everything they wanted to for this movie, and you can really feel it in some scenes. Ironically, if you split the scenes up right, you very well might confuse them for cutscenes in a new Mario game. The only thing from this movie that has any staying power is the meme about Chris Pratt voicing every animated character, and even then that's starting to die out now. The Super Mario Brothers movie is a good movie, but the 1993 one stood out to me more honestly. Doesn't mean it's a better film, or even a good film. It just means it's more unique. Anyways, the movie was okay, and alright, and fine. 6 out of 10. John Wick 4. I had watched this one without seeing any of the other John Wicks, and I gotta say, do all of them work as standalone movies as well as this one? I didn't feel left out at all, and it felt like with how much world building they were doing in this one, I was probably more informed than I would be if I had seen the other 3 movies. John Wick 4 was super intense and gorgeous from a cinematography standpoint. Holy crap, that word is infinitely longer than I thought it was. I've never typed out that word before. Anyways, super pretty movie, and just as gruesome as it's been hyped up to be by literally everyone I know. That one non-stop shot in the house was awesome, that scene where John Wick falls down 1,000,000,000 billion stairs was hilarious, and the ending has me wondering how the fuck they're gonna make a 5th one of these. Unless it's about the guy with his dog. That would be an awesome movie. 7 out of 10. Barbie was a good movie. I honestly was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did, but yeah, it was super cool. It had a really important message, although it didn't really do more than scratch the surface of said message, and had a lot of funny characters. I'm a sucker for Will Ferrell, what can I say? There was that scene at the end that almost had me crying, and Ken. Just everything about Ken is so good. Sublime! Perfect Ryan Gosling casting. Although I will say, if you treat Ken as some kind of Sigma male like Patrick Bateman or some shit, you've completely missed the point of the movie, and you need to get the rocks out of your brain. In any case, 7 out of 10. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was probably the last Marvel movie I've watched before I just stopped following Marvel stuff altogether. And honestly, what a good way to end out that little era of movies for me. No, The Marvels doesn't count. I loved so many aspects of this movie. The focus on Rocket and his backstory, the way they handle Peter and Gamora mutually moving on from their past relationship, the formation of the new Guardians at the end, the rounding out of the characters of all the old Guardians, and Cosmo. I love this dog. I wish she got more fan art. She's so cute. Also, Mario says the funny swear word. 8 out of 10. TMNT has already gotten its fair share of discussion from me, due to the fact that I've already made a video about it. I'll talk a little about Mutant Mayhem, but I'll keep it brief. Absolutely stunning art style. The younger turtles felt more like teenagers than they ever have. Amazing cast of characters and a very engaging story. And as someone who's never really been interested in TMNT, I cannot wait for the sequel, if it ever comes. It was a superb movie, I loved it to pieces, and if you want to see my whole thoughts about it, I'll link the video in the description. Anyways, 8 out of 10. Godzilla -1. This movie also got a video dedicated to it, only I think I like this one a bit more, but I'll be brief regardless. As someone whose interest in Godzilla died after watching the terrible American movies, I was not really excited for this one. But now that I know that I was ignorant and stupid, because the Japanese Godzillas are the good ones, and I did not know that. This movie is yucky good. From the human characters being likable and actually in tangible danger, to Godzilla actually being scary instead of some ally to the A-list Hollywood stars. The only thing you gotta worry about is subtitles, but as long as you're not a pansy and can read, it shouldn't be a problem. If you want to hear my full thoughts on Lizard Guy, then again, link in the description. 9 out of 10. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'm beginning to notice a pattern here. This movie also had its own dedicated video, so you can check that one out in the description. But in summary, art style beautiful, the Spot immediately became one of my top 10 favorite villains ever, and this movie is so good! I can't put it into words! I could watch this one over and over and over and still eat it up. The differing details that happened with different releases of the movie was an interesting move that was probably both a horrible time for the animators and a nightmare to figure out in the home release of the movie. The only issue is that it was kind of a mess behind the scenes. Let's not rush the animators with crunch for the sequel, shall we? 9 out of 10. Fantastic film. But there can only be one number 1. Oppenheimer. I don't want to over-exaggerate here like I do in most of my videos, but I think this movie changed me. And I don't mean in a way where like, oh, I like one of the characters so much I integrated them into my personality, or, oh, I thought about this movie for a whole week and then I stopped caring. I mean, this movie changed me. I don't know what it is about biopics that get to me so much, with Elvis in 2022 and Oppenheimer last year, but man, I cannot help but be fascinated. I think what really got to me was how long this film was. Oppenheimer was 3 hours long, and it uses every single second to the maximum. There is so much to talk about that I would need to make an entire video about Oppenheimer alone, and God knows how long that would take. The soundtrack, the intense sound design, Cillian Murphy's acting, just the history behind what the movie is about, all of it is just fantastic. And it really put a lot into perspective for me, which is why I felt so different after watching Oppenheimer, and why I'm not the same guy I was now. Although it probably doesn't help that I saw this movie the exact day I was going through a breakup, so maybe I was a little more vulnerable to having my worldview changed around that time. Who knows? I could argue that it was too long, and some scenes were unnecessary, or some other whiny nitpick, but I don't care. It never really felt that slow when I watched it. Nothing felt much like filler or included for no reason, and overall it was just very well-rounded. In any case, Oppenheimer may be the only movie I've ever seen to get a 10 out of 10 from me personally. Aside from Fantastic Mr. Fox, of course. I see no flaws. That may be because I'm biased, but remember, you are watching an opinion piece, and like I always say, if you want objectivity, go check Wikipedia, and even then, anyone can edit that. Well, that's my ranking of all the movies I saw in 2023. I'm fairly happy with this list, and I really hope that 2024 gives me equally good movies to talk about next year. Also, I'm hoping I can see more movies this year. There's a lot that I missed out this time around, but unfortunately, I am not Mr. Big Shot YouTuber, so I can't see everything I want to. My money is limited. Maybe in the future when I reach a gajillion subscribers. Anywho, this video is on its way out now, so let's just do a little housekeeping before I clear out of here. Follow my socials, they'll be in the description. Become a member of the YouTube channel. It's only $3 a month, and you get some neat perks, like a role and special access to a private channel on my Discord server, which you should also join. Oh, and stuff like polls about what videos I should do in the community tab. Listen to my podcast, check out my streams, throw out the leftovers in your fridge. They're way too old to eat now. Thanksgiving was ages ago. And be sure to send any fan art to the Discord server or tag me in any of my social medias to get it slapped into this gallery here at the end, as long as it's not an SFW. You will be credited. Okay, that's all. My name is Goose. I thank you very much for watching. And, yeah, nothing's coming to mind. I think that's it. I got nothing funny this time. Bye-bye.